The distress signal came through the quantum communications array at 0347 hours, Earth Standard Time. Commander Sarah Chen was halfway through her third cup of coffee when the emergency beacon lit up her command console like a supernova. "Sir, we're receiving an SOS transmission from Sector 779, Lieutenant Rodriguez called out from the communications station. His voice carried the sharp edge of urgency that made everyone on the bridge of the UES Vengeance turn their heads. Sarah set down her cup and strode across the gleaming metal deck. The bridge hummed with the quiet efficiency of Earth's most advanced warship, but beneath that calm exterior lurked something far more dangerous. The crew of the Vengeance, like all human vessels, carried the reputation of their species wherever they went. To the rest of the galaxy, they were the Deathworlders, beings who evolved on a planet so hostile that most alien species couldn't survive an hour on its surface. "Put it on speakers," Sarah commanded. The bridge filled with a haunting melody of clicks, whistles, and harmonics. The universal translator kicked in after a few seconds, converting the alien language into something comprehensible. "This is Colony Administrator Veltar of the Zalani Collective. We are under attack by Korthak's raiders. Our shields are failing. Civilian casualties mounting. Please, if anyone receives this message, we need immediate assistance. We have children, so many children." The transmission cut to static. Sarah's jaw tightened. The Zalani were one of the few species that had shown kindness to humanity when they first ventured into space. Peaceful merchants and scholars, they had traded knowledge freely while others had tried to exploit Earth's inexperience with galactic politics. "How far?" she asked. "3 jumps through hyperspace, Commander. We could be there in 6 hours, Rodriguez replied. "And the rest of the fleet? The Retribution and Defiance are within range. The Mars Pride is conducting exercises 2 systems over. They could join us within 8 hours. Sarah turned to face her crew. 50 souls, each one a product of Earth's unforgiving evolutionary crucible. They had trained for moments like this, though most of the galaxy-preferred humans stayed in their own corner of space. The Deathworlder fleet was tolerated, not welcomed. Their presence at council meetings was met with nervous glances and hurried whispers. "Send word to the fleet. Tell them we're responding to a Code 7 emergency. Full combat readiness." She paused, knowing the weight of what she was about to unleash. "And inform High Command that we're about to show the Korthaks why Earth children are told bedtime stories about monsters that fear the dark." The bridge erupted into controlled chaos as orders flew and systems powered up. The Vengeance's massive engines thrummed to life, their antimatter cores generating enough power to crack a small moon. Throughout the ship, Marines checked their weapons and pilots ran pre-flight checks on their fighters. In the medical bay, Dr. James Park prepared his trauma teams. He had seen what human weapons could do to alien physiology. It wasn't pretty. Most species in the galaxy had evolved on peaceful worlds with stable climates and abundant resources. They had developed energy shields and laser weapons, true, but they fought with the restraint of civilized beings. Humans were different. They came from a world of predators and prey, of ice ages and volcanic winters, of diseases that killed millions and natural disasters that reshaped continents. When humans fought, they didn't just aim to defeat their enemies. They aimed to ensure those enemies never threatened them again. "Doc, how's our blood supply?" Sarah's voice crackled over the intercom. "Fully stocked, Commander, both human and synthetic. We're ready for casualties." "Let's hope we don't need it, but prep for Zalani physiology. We might have wounded civilians to treat." "Already on it." The first jump through hyperspace was always the hardest. Reality twisted and bent as the Vengeance punched through the fabric of space-time, emerging seconds later in a shower of exotic particles. The crew barely noticed. They had done this hundreds of times. "Jump successful. Recalibrating for next jump," the navigation officer announced. Sarah pulled up the tactical display on her command chair. The Korthax were raiders, pirates who preyed on weaker species throughout this sector of the galaxy. They had fast ships and decent weapons, but they had never faced a human fleet in full combat mode. Most of their victories came from intimidation and superior numbers. "Commander, incoming transmission from the Retribution," Rodriguez called out. Captain Marcus Webb appeared on the main screen, his scarred face set in grim determination. The Retribution was the fleet's heavy assault carrier, loaded with enough firepower to sterilize a continent. "Sarah, my people are ready. We've got 12 squadrons of fighters and enough Marines to take a small moon. What's the plan?" "We go in fast and hard, Marcus. The Zalani colony won't last long under bombardment. We need to draw the Korthax away from the civilians." "The old honey trap? With a Deathworlder twist. How do you feel about playing bait?" Marcus grinned, the expression making him look even more dangerous. "You know me, Sarah. I love a good fight. The Retribution will jump in first, nice and loud. When they come for us, you hit them from behind." "That's the idea. The Defiance will provide cover for evacuation ships. The Mars Pride can mop up any stragglers when they arrive." "Simple, brutal, effective. I like it." The connection ended, and Sarah turned her attention back to the bridge. Her crew moved with practiced precision, each one a cog in a deadly machine. The galaxy called them Deathworlders as an insult, a way to other them and keep them at arm's length. They didn't understand that humans wore that title as armor. "Second jump in 30 seconds, the navigation officer announced. Sarah strapped herself into her command chair. The tactical display showed the positions of all 4 human ships as they prepared for the next phase of their journey. The Zalani didn't know it yet, but help was coming. Not the measured response of the Galactic Council or the negotiated settlements preferred by most species. Human help. Deathworlder help. The kind that left craters where enemies used to be. "Jump!" Reality twisted again, and the Vengeance hurtled through the void toward its destination. In the medical bay, Dr. Park double-checked his supplies. In the fighter bays, pilots kissed photos of loved ones and made peace with whatever gods they believed in. In the Marine barracks, soldiers loaded ammunition and checked their armor seals. They all knew what was coming. The galaxy had rules for warfare, conventions that limited casualties and preserved infrastructure. Humans had signed those treaties, of course. They had smiled and shaken hands, or tentacles or pseudopods, with their alien neighbors. But those treaties had subclauses and exceptions. Attacks on civilians, especially children, voided many protections. The Korthax had chosen their victims poorly. They were about to learn why human military doctrine included phrases like total war and scorched earth. "Final jump coordinates locked in," the navigation officer reported. Sarah stood, her presence commanding attention from every soul on the bridge. "All hands, this is the commander. In less than 4 hours we will engage hostile forces threatening innocent civilians. The Zalani have been friends to Earth since our first contact. They showed us kindness when others showed fear. Today we repay that debt." She paused, letting her words sink in. "You all know what we are to the rest of the galaxy. Deathworlders, monsters from a nightmare planet. Today we show them they're right. Today we remind the Korthax and anyone else watching that there are worse things in the dark than pirates and raiders. There's us." The bridge erupted in cheers and battle cries. Similar scenes played out across the fleet as word spread. The humans were going to war. Not the limited engagements they had fought before, carefully restrained to avoid scaring their neighbors. This was different. This was personal. "Final jump on your mark, Commander," the navigation officer said. Sarah resumed her seat, her fingers dancing across the tactical controls. The battle plan was simple, as the best plans often were. The Retribution would jump in with all weapons hot, drawing the Korthax fleet away from the colony. The Vengeance would follow minutes later, catching the raiders in a crossfire. The Defiance would use the chaos to evacuate as many civilians as possible. And if the Korthax refused to retreat, well, humans had a saying about that. No mercy for the merciless. "Mark," Sarah commanded. The universe bent one final time, and the human fleet hurtled toward their destiny. In the Zalani colony, defenders prepared for their last stand. Children huddled in shelters while their parents prayed to ancestors for deliverance. They had no idea their prayers were about to be answered by the most dangerous species in known space. The Deathworlders were coming, and they were angry. The retribution erupted from hyperspace like a thunderbolt of human fury. Captain Marcus Webb stood on his bridge, watching as the tactical display populated with enemy contacts. 37 Korthax vessels hung in orbit around the Zalani colony, their weapons raining death on the shields below. "All fighters, launch immediately, weapons free. I repeat, weapons free," Marcus commanded. The carrier's bay doors opened, and death poured out. 200 human fighters, each piloted by someone who had grown up on a world where reaction time meant the difference between eating and being eaten. They moved through space like a school of prehistoric predators, their formations tight and purposeful. "Sir, the Korthax are hailing us," the communications officer reported. "Put them through." A reptilian face appeared on the main screen, its scales a mottled green-brown. The Korthax commander's eyes widened when he saw who had answered the distress call. "Deathworlders," he hissed. "This is not your concern. Leave now, and we will allow you to depart unharmed." Marcus smiled, the expression devoid of warmth. "You're attacking civilians. Children. That makes it our concern. The Zalani owe us tribute. This is a legal collection action under Korthax law." "Funny thing about laws," Marcus said, his fingers hovering over the weapons console. "They only matter if you're alive to enforce them." He cut the connection and turned to his weapons officer. "All batteries, target their command ship, fire." The Retribution's main guns spoke with the voice of humanity's rage. Kinetic rounds accelerated to significant fractions of light speed screamed across the void. The Korthax shields, designed to stop energy weapons, crumpled like tissue paper. The rounds punched through the command ship's hull, sending atmosphere and bodies spinning into space. "Direct hit. Their command ship is venting atmosphere," the tactical officer reported. "Good. Target their supply vessels next. I want them to know fear." The Korthax fleet reacted like a disturbed nest of insects, ships breaking formation and wheeling to face this new threat. Energy beams lanced out, splashing against the Retribution's shields. Where alien shields relied on energy dispersion, human shields were different. They had been designed on a world where asteroids fell like rain and solar flares could cook continents. They absorbed punishment that would have shattered most species' defenses. In space around the human carrier, the fighter battle had begun in earnest. Human pilots, raised on video games and neural interface training, danced through enemy fire with inhuman precision. They didn't fight like the rest of the galaxy, with careful maneuvers and energy conservation. They fought like their ancestors had hunted, in packs, ruthless and coordinated. "Wolfpack 7, I've got 3 bandits on my 6, a pilot called out. "Copy that, 7-3, 7-5 and I are coming around. Keep them busy for 10 seconds. The human fighter jinked and weaved, its pilot pulling G-forces that would have killed most aliens. Behind him, 3 Korthax fighters tried to line up shots, their pilots struggling to match the insane maneuvers. They never saw the 2 human fighters dropping from above until railgun rounds tore through their hulls. On the colony below, Veltar watched the battle unfold on the emergency screens. He had seen space combat before, careful, measured exchanges where ships danced at maximum range and battles could last for days. This was nothing like that. The humans fought like the stories said, like creatures born from nightmare. "Administrator, the human carrier is taking heavy fire," one of his aides reported. "Can they withstand it?" I don't know." No one has ever seen human shields tested like this. The Retribution shuddered as multiple beam weapons found their mark. On the bridge, Marcus barely noticed. His ship had been built in the orbital yards of Mars, where engineers had asked themselves a simple question. What would it take to kill us? Then they had built something that could survive it. Shields at 70% and holding, the defense officer announced. Good. Launch the gunships. Tell them to target engines only. I want those ships dead in space. From the Retribution's belly, 20 gunships emerged. Each one was crewed by human marines in power armor, carrying weapons that violated at least 3 galactic treaties on excessive force. They moved through the battle zone like sharks through a school of fish, picking off targets with methodical precision. Sir, hyperspace signatures detected. It's the Vengeance. Marcus grinned. Right on time. All ships, execute hammer and anvil. Let's show these raiders how Deathworlders handle pirates. The Vengeance burst from hyperspace behind the Korthax fleet, her weapons already firing. Commander Chen had positioned her ship perfectly, catching the raiders between 2 human warships. It was a tactic as old as warfare itself, but executed with technology and brutality that the galaxy had never seen. This is Commander Chen to all Korthax vessels. You have 10 seconds to power down weapons and surrender. This is your only warning. The response came in the form of desperate energy fire as the raiders tried to fight their way out of the trap. Several ships attempted to jump to hyperspace, only to find their engines mysteriously offline, victims of the human gunship's precision strikes. Time's up, Sarah said coldly. All batteries, fire at will, fighter squadrons, weapons free, show no mercy. What followed was not a battle. It was an execution. Human weapons designed by a species that had spent its entire evolutionary history finding new ways to kill, tore through Korthax ships with terrifying efficiency. Railguns punched through hulls. Missile swarms overwhelmed point defenses. Fighters strafed bridge windows with depleted uranium rounds. The galaxy had rules about proportional response. Humans had rules too, older ones, written in blood and burned into genetic memory. Rules like protect the pack and eliminate threats completely. Commander, several Korthax ships are trying to ram the colony shields, Lieutenant Rodriguez called out. Sarah's eyes narrowed. Using ships as kinetic weapons against civilians crossed every line of warfare. Fighter Squadron Alpha, intercept those ships. Stop them by any means necessary. Copy that, Commander. Alpha Squadron moving to intercept. 12 human fighters peeled away from the main battle, afterburners glowing like miniature stars. They closed on the falling Korthax ships with suicidal speed, their pilots making split-second calculations. I've got the leader. Fox 3! Fox 3! Missiles streaked out, but the Korthax ship's bulk absorbed the impacts. It continued its death plunge toward the colony shields, its crew either dead or committed to taking civilians with them. Screw this, Alpha Leader muttered. All fighters, follow my lead. We're going through them. Sir, that's what we trained for. On my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark. The human fighters opened up with everything they had, concentrating their fire on specific points. Railgun rounds, missiles, even their point defense lasers, all focused on creating weakness in the Korthax hulls. Then, at the last possible second, they pulled away. All but one. Alpha 3, piloted by Lieutenant Maria Santos, didn't pull away. She flew straight through the hole her squadron had created, her fighters' reinforced nose cone punching through weakened metal like a bullet through paper. The Korthax ship's structural integrity failed catastrophically, breaking into pieces that burned up harmlessly against the colony's atmosphere. Alpha 3, respond! Maria, come in! Static filled the channel for heart-stopping seconds. Then, weakly, I'm alive. Fighters totaled, but the ejection system worked. Someone want to pick me up? On it, Alpha 3, hang tight. The sacrifice play had worked, but it illustrated something the Korthax were beginning to understand. Humans didn't just fight to win. They fought with a fury that defied logic, taking risks that no sane species would consider. On the Retribution, Marcus watched as the battle turned into a rout. Korthak's ships tried to flee, only to find human fighters herding them back into the kill zone. Those that surrendered were disabled and left drifting. Those that continued fighting were destroyed utterly. "Sir, the Mars Pride just jumped in," Tactical reported. "Tell Captain Morrison he's late to the party. Have him secure the surrendered vessels and prep for prisoner transport." "Aye, sir." The battle had lasted less than 20 minutes. In that time, the human fleet had destroyed or disabled 37 Korthak's vessels, rescued a colony under siege, and sent a message to every pirate and raider in the sector. The Deathworlders protect their friends. But the fight wasn't over. On the planet below, Korthak's ground forces were still attacking civilian shelters. They had landed before the human fleet arrived, thinking they would have hours to complete their raid. They were about to learn why human Marines were the stuff of nightmares. "Commander Chen." "This is Colonel Hart aboard the Defiance. My Marines are ready to drop. Just say the word." Sarah looked at the tactical display. The space battle was won, but children were still dying on the surface. "The word is given, Colonel. Show them why Earth's children sleep soundly." "With pleasure, Commander. 1st Battalion, prepare for combat drop. We're going hunting." The Defiance moved into low orbit, its drop pods already loaded with humanity's finest killers. Each Marine wore power armor that could shrug off energy blasts and punch through steel. They carried weapons that would have been considered war crimes on their own world: plasma throwers, sonic disruptors, and good old-fashioned high-explosive rounds. "Remember, people," Colonel Hart addressed his troops, civilians and children in the area. "Watch your backgrounds and check your targets. But if it's shooting at civilians, I want it dead before it can blink. Understood?" "Sir, yes, sir," 800 voices roared back. "Good. May your ancestors guide your aim. Drop in 30 seconds. The drop pods launched like meteors, screaming through the atmosphere wreathed in flames. Inside, Marines checked weapons and said prayers to whatever they believed in. They were about to show the galaxy why human ground forces were banned from most peacekeeping operations. Too violent, the Council had said, too aggressive, too willing to escalate. The Council had never seen human children threatened. In the colony below, a Korthak squad advanced on a school shelter. The local defenders had fallen back, their energy weapons barely scratching the raiders' armor. Inside, 300 Zalani children huddled together, their caretakers standing between them and the door with nothing but courage. The squad leader kicked down the door, his weapon raised. "Surrender the children, and we might let some of you live." He never heard the drop pod land behind him, never heard the armor seals hiss open. His first indication that something was wrong was when his second-in-command's head simply disappeared, replaced by a fine mist. "Contact rear!" someone screamed. Too late. Far too late. 4 human Marines bounded over the rubble, their armor's servos whining as they moved with inhuman speed. They didn't announce themselves, didn't demand surrender. They simply killed. Plasma fire turned Korthak's raiders into ash. Sonic blasts liquefied internal organs. When one raider tried to grab a child as a shield, a Marine crossed 20 meters in 2 seconds, grabbed the alien's arm, and tore it off at the socket. In 30 seconds, it was over. The Marines stood among the carnage, their armor splattered with various colors of alien blood. One of them, Sergeant Williams, retracted his helmet and knelt down to child height. "It's okay," he said softly, his voice at odds with the violence he had just unleashed. "You're safe now. The monsters are gone." A small Zalani child, no bigger than a human toddler, reached out and touched his armored hand. "Are you monsters too?" she asked innocently. Williams smiled sadly. "Yes, little one. But we're your monsters, and we eat the other monsters for breakfast." Across the colony, similar scenes played out. Human Marines dropped from the sky like avenging angels. bringing death to those who threatened the innocent. They fought with a savagery that shocked even battle-hardened Korthax warriors. No quarter asked, none given. The raiders had expected to face energy weapons and defensive positions. Instead, they faced humans, descendants of persistence hunters who had chased prey to exhaustion, survivors of a world that had tried to kill them every single day. When cornered, the Korthax learned what Earth's prey animals had known for millennia. Humans didn't stop. Ever. Command, this is Hart. Primary landing zone secure. Moving to secondary objectives. Copy that, Colonel. Be advised, we're tracking several Korthax units retreating to the spaceport. They may try to escape. Negative, Command. They won't make it that far. Hart switched to battalion frequency. All units converge on the spaceport. Full sprint. I want those raiders to understand something before they die. You can't outrun a persistence hunter. 800 Marines began to run. Not jog, not tactical advance, full sprint in power armor that let them cover ground at 60 kilometers per hour. The fleeing Korthax looked back to see a wave of death gaining on them, never slowing, never tiring. It was the last thing many of them saw. In space, the battle was winding down. The few remaining Korthax ships had surrendered, their crews preferring capture to annihilation. The human fleet had taken minimal damage, some scorched armor, depleted ammunition, one destroyed fighter whose pilot had miraculously survived. But the message had been sent, written in wreckage and fire across the star system. The Deathworlders had answered a distress call, and they had unleashed hell itself on those who threatened their friends. Commander, Rodriguez spoke quietly. We're receiving a transmission from the colony. Put it through. Veltar appeared on the screen, his large eyes wet with what Sarah had learned were Zalani tears. Behind him, she could see human Marines helping evacuate wounded civilians, their armor still splattered with evidence of violence. Commander Chen, Veltar's voice shook with emotion. There are no words. You saved us. You saved our children. You helped us when no one else would, Sarah replied simply. This is what friends do. The Council will hear of this. The Korthax attacked civilians, children. The Council can take their complaints and file them in the nearest black hole. Sarah's voice hardened. And make sure they understand this. Earth protects its friends. Anyone who forgets that will be reminded, forcefully. Veltar nodded slowly. I understand. And Commander, thank you. Thank you for being the monsters that eat other monsters. The transmission ended, and Sarah leaned back in her command chair. Around her, the bridge crew worked to coordinate rescue efforts and prisoner transport. The battle was over, but the real work was just beginning. Ma'am, Rodriguez approached with a tablet. Initial casualty reports. Sarah scanned the numbers. Hundreds of Zalani civilians saved, thousands of Korthax raiders dead or captured, one human fighter lost, pilot recovered, minor injuries among the Marines, mostly from over-enthusiastic combat. The Council is going to have opinions about this, Rodriguez noted. Let them. We followed the laws of war. It's not our fault the Korthax weren't prepared for how humans interpret those laws. She stood, addressing the bridge. Well done, people. Let's get these civilians some aid and head home. As the Vengeance moved toward the colony, Sarah allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The galaxy called them Deathworlders, monsters from a nightmare world. They were right. But today, those monsters had stood between innocence and harm. Today, the Deathworlders had been heroes. The Galactic Council chamber on Station Prime hummed with nervous energy. Representatives from 47 species had gathered for an emergency session, called just 3 days after what the media had dubbed the Zalani intervention. At the center of the circular chamber, holographic displays showed footage from the battle. Human fighters tearing through Korthak's vessels, Marines dropping from orbit like meteors of death, the systematic annihilation of an entire raider fleet. Ambassador Chen Weiming, no relation to Commander Sarah Chen, stood at the human delegation podium with the calm of someone who had weathered many storms. He was an older man, his hair silver gray, his eyes carrying the weight of representing a species that terrified half the galaxy. "The human delegation recognizes the Council's concerns," he began, his voice carrying across the chamber. "However, we maintain that our forces acted entirely within the bounds of interstellar law." "Within the bounds?" The Vrex ambassador's tentacles writhed in agitation. "Your fleet destroyed 37 vessels. The casualty count..." "The casualty count among raiders who were actively bombarding civilians," Chen interrupted smoothly. "Article 7 of the Galactic Accord states that any force engaging in deliberate attacks on civilian populations forfeits standard protections. Our response was proportional to the threat." "Proportional?" The Korthak's ambassador, newly appointed after his predecessor's death in the battle, stood on 4 legs that trembled with rage. "You call the complete annihilation of our collection fleet proportional? You call shooting at children a collection action?" Chen's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper that somehow carried to every corner of the chamber. "Choose your next words very carefully, Ambassador. Earth has been patient with this Council's prejudice against our species. That patience has limits." The chamber erupted in nervous chatter. The human ambassador stood like a statue, letting the weight of his words sink in. Behind him, the rest of the human delegation sat with similar stillness, a predator's patience that made several representatives unconsciously lean away. The council moderator, an ancient Etherian whose species had achieved spaceflight before humans had discovered fire, raised a crystalline appendage for silence. "Ambassador Chen, while we acknowledge the provocation, surely you must understand the concern. The footage we've seen, the violence displayed, was necessary to save lives," Chen finished. "Let me ask this council a question. How many times have we sat in this chamber and debated responses to raider attacks? How many colonies have burned while we formed committees and drafted strongly worded condemnations?" Silence greeted his words. "The Zalani sent a distress signal. They were under attack. Their children were dying. And what did the mighty Galactic Council do? Nothing. As always." Chen's eyes swept across the assembly. "Humans answered. We answered because it was right, because we could, and because the Zalani are our friends. If that frightens you, perhaps you should ask yourselves why." On the colony world of Zalani K3, the rebuilding had already begun. Human engineering teams worked alongside Zalani civilians, using technology and techniques that amazed the peaceful aliens. Where Zalani construction was careful and methodical, humans built like they fought, quickly, efficiently, and with redundancy that bordered on paranoia. "I don't understand," Veltar said to Colonel Hart as they watched a human construction mech reinforce a damaged shelter. "Why make the walls 3 times thicker than necessary?" Hart, out of his power armor and dressed in simple fatigues, smiled. "Because on Earth, necessary is what you need for normal conditions. We don't build for normal. We build for the worst day imaginable, then add 50%. Your people are unusual. That's one way to put it." Hart accepted a cup of the local tea from a Zalani child, the same one who had asked if he was a monster. She giggled and ran away, no longer afraid of the human soldiers. "Can I ask you something, Administrator?" "Of course. Why did you help us when we first made contact? Every other species took one look at our biology and classification and wanted nothing to do with the Deathworlders. But not you." Veltar's large eyes blinked slowly. A gesture Hart had learned indicated deep thought. "Do you know our history, Colonel?" "Some of it. Peaceful species. No natural predators on your homeworld." "Correct. We evolved in paradise, but paradise makes you weak. The administrator gestured to the ruins around them. When we first ventured into space, we were prey for every aggressive species we met. We lost colonies, ships, people. We learned to run, to hide, to pay tribute when cornered. But you survived. We survived by recognizing potential allies. When we studied Earth, yes, we saw the Deathworld classification, the predators, the diseases, the disasters. But we also saw something else. Veltar turned to face Hart directly. We saw a species that had every reason to become monsters but chose not to. You could have evolved into pure killers, but you didn't. You formed communities. You protected your weak. You made art and music and poetry on a world that tried to kill you every day. Hart was quiet for a moment. We had to. It was the only way to survive. Exactly. And that's why we helped you. Because we recognized kindred spirits, survivors who chose compassion despite everything. Veltar gestured to the human Marines, helping distribute food to civilians. Today proved we were right. You came when we called. You fought for our children as if they were your own. They might as well be, Hart said simply. Once you're under human protection, you're family. And we're very protective of our family. Back on Station Prime, the debate continued to rage. Several species called for sanctions against Earth, fearing that the display of violence would encourage human expansion. Others, primarily those who had suffered from raider attacks, quietly suggested that having Deathworlder allies might not be such a bad thing. The Korthax hegemony demands reparations, their ambassador declared. The loss of our fleet. Your raiding fleet, Chen corrected, which was engaged in illegal activities. Earth will pay no reparations. However, we are prepared to return the surviving crews after they've been tried for war crimes. War crimes? This was a commercial dispute. The moment you fired on children, it became war. Chen's voice carried the weight of human history, millennia of conflicts where such distinctions had been written in blood. And you lost. The Etherian moderator intervened before tensions could escalate further. Perhaps we should hear from the affected party. Ambassador Velnu of the Zelani Collective, you have the floor. A tall Zelani rose from their delegation section, moving with the grace their species was known for. But there was something different about their bearing now, a straightness of spine that spoke of newfound confidence. Honored representatives, Velnu began, their musical voice filling the chamber. 3 days ago, my people faced extinction on Colony K3. Our calls for help to this council went unanswered, as they always do. But Earth answered. They paused, letting that sink in. Yes, the humans fought with terrible efficiency. Yes, they killed those who threatened us. But they also showed mercy to those who surrendered. Their medics treated our wounded before their own. Their soldiers shielded our children with their bodies. Their engineers are, even now, helping us rebuild stronger than before. The ambassador's large eyes swept the chamber. You fear the Deathworlders. You always have. But I ask you, who would you rather have as a neighbor? Those who take what they want through force? Or those who use force to protect the innocent? The human methods, another ambassador began, saved 300,000 Zelani lives, Velnu cut them off. Children who will grow up because human Marines stood between them and death. Families reunited because human pilots flew into certain death to protect our shields. A colony that survives because the Deathworlders decided we were worth protecting. They straightened to their full height. The Zelani Collective formally announces a mutual defense pact with Earth. Any attack on human interest will be considered an attack on the Collective. We may not have warships or weapons, but we have the fastest communications network in the galaxy. Earth will never face a threat they don't see coming. The chamber erupted, a peaceful species aligning with the Deathworlders. It was unprecedented. Several ambassadors tried to speak at once, but Velnu wasn't finished. Furthermore, we are establishing cultural exchange programs. Our children will learn on Earth if they choose. Their children will study on our worlds. We will share technology, art, and philosophy. The galaxy fears what humans might become. We choose to help shape that future through friendship rather than fear. Chen Weiming stood, bowing deeply to the Zilani ambassador, a gesture of profound respect in human culture. Earth accepts this pact with gratitude and humility. We will prove worthy of your trust. On Earth, the news of the Mutual Defense Pact was met with celebration. Humanity had spent decades as the galaxy's pariahs, tolerated but never accepted. Now they had true allies, friends who saw past the Deathworld classification to the people beneath. The response was typically human, immediate and overwhelming. Relief supplies poured into collection centers. Volunteer construction crews signed up by the thousands. Earth's best trauma counselors offered their services for children affected by the attack. The colony that had barely survived was about to experience human generosity on a scale that would become legendary. But not everyone was celebrating. In the shadowy margins of known space, where law was suggestion and might made right, the destruction of the Korthax fleet sent ripples through the raider communities. For generations, they had preyed on the weak, secure in the knowledge that the Galactic Council would debate while they pillaged. Now there was a new player in the game, one that didn't debate, one that answered distress calls with war fleets and met violence with annihilation. "The humans are a problem," growled Karix, one of the most feared raider lords in 3 sectors. His species, the Vorthon, were apex predators on their homeworld, 4 meters of muscle, claws, and teeth. They'll embolden others, make them think they can resist. "Then we kill them," his lieutenant suggested. "Show the galaxy that even Deathworlders can die." Karix considered this. The human fleet was powerful, but not invincible. They had shown their tactics at Ka-3, fast, brutal, but predictable in their protectiveness. Perhaps that could be exploited. "Send word to the other clans," he decided. "It's time the raiders worked together. The humans want to play protector. Let's see how many distress calls they can answer at once." Back in human space, military planners were having similar thoughts. The victory at K3 had shown their capabilities, but it had also revealed their limitations. Earth's fleet was powerful but small. They couldn't be everywhere at once. "We need to expand the fleet," Admiral Martinez argued at the Joint Chiefs meeting. "The Mutual Defense Pact with the Zilani is just the beginning. Other species will see what we did and want similar protection." "Agreed," General Thompson nodded. "But we also need to train allied forces. We can't carry this burden alone." "The Zilani want to help," Air Marshal Singh added. "They're not warriors, but they have the best sensor networks in the galaxy. Early warning could make all the difference." Fleet Admiral Reeves, the highest-ranking officer in Earth's military, studied the strategic displays. "We've changed the game. For 50 years, we've been the monsters hiding in our corner of space. Now we're the monsters who protect the innocent. That's going to make us targets." "Let them come," Martinez said with typical Marine bravado. "We've been preparing for this since first contact. Earth stands ready." "Earth stands ready," Reeves agreed. "But we need to be smart about this. We can't fight the entire galaxy. We need allies, and not just the Zilani. There are other species out there who've been victims of raiders and pirates. Species the Council has failed to protect." She pulled up a star map, highlighting dozens of systems. "These are all colonies that have been hit in the last year alone. The Council's response has been predictably useless. We start here. Offer protection agreements, training, technology sharing, build a coalition." "The Council won't like it," Thompson warned. "The Council can express their concerns to our complaint department." Reeves smiled coldly. "Which I believe is currently located in the nearest black hole." On Colony K3, night had fallen. The human ships maintained their protective orbit while repairs continued on the surface. In a makeshift command center, Commander Sarah Chen met with Administrator Veltar and the other colony leaders. "We can't thank you enough," one of the leaders said. "Without your intervention." "Without our intervention, you'd have done what you always do, survive," Sarah interrupted gently. "We just made it easier, but this won't be the last attack. The raiders will want revenge." "Then what do we do?" Sarah activated a holographic display showing defensive improvements. "We teach you to fight back. Human instructors will train your people in small arms and tactics. We'll help you upgrade your shields and sensors. Most importantly, we'll teach you the most human trait of all." "Which is?" "Spite," Sarah grinned. "The absolute refusal to give up just because someone wants you to. It's served our species well for 200,000 years. The Zilani leaders exchanged glances. The idea of their peaceful species learning warfare from the Deathworlders should have been terrifying. Instead, it felt like hope. "When do we start?" Veltar asked. "Tomorrow. But tonight we celebrate. You're alive, your children are safe, and you've got the scariest allies in the galaxy watching your backs." Sarah raised a glass of the local fermented beverage. "To survival. To survival," the Zilani echoed. And for the first time in their species' history, they meant it as more than just existing. The ripples from the Battle of K3 spread across the galaxy in the days that followed. On a dozen worlds, species that had resigned themselves to paying tribute to raiders began to wonder if there might be another way. Secret messages were sent to Earth's diplomatic corps, careful inquiries about protection agreements and defensive pacts. The Galactic Council watched with growing alarm as the political landscape shifted. The Deathworlders were no longer content to remain in their corner of space. They were actively recruiting, building a coalition of the very species the Council had failed to protect. "This is unprecedented," the Vrex ambassador complained in a private meeting. "They're creating a military alliance outside Council authority." "What authority?" The Sakari representative clicked their mandibles in frustration. "We've failed these species for centuries. The humans succeeded where we failed. Perhaps we should be learning from them rather than fearing them." "Learning? From Deathworlders?" "They protected civilians at great risk to themselves. They showed mercy to surrendered enemies. They're helping rebuild what was destroyed." The Sakari leaned forward. "Tell me, when was the last time the Council did any of those things effectively?" The uncomfortable silence that followed spoke volumes. Meanwhile, in the outer reaches of known space, Carix's alliance of raider clans prepared their response. 43 different groups, usually at each other's throats, had agreed to work together for one purpose: to prove that the Deathworlders could be beaten. "Hit multiple targets simultaneously," Carix explained to the assembled captains. "Stretch their fleet thin, make them choose who to save, and when they're scattered and exhausted, we strike at Earth itself." "Earth is a fortress," one captain protested. "Their home system defenses are designed for conventional attacks. We won't be conventional." Carix displayed tactical data stolen at great cost. "We hit their orbital infrastructure, their shipyards, not to conquer but to wound, to show the galaxy that aligning with humans means becoming a target." The plan was ambitious, brutal, and might actually have worked if the raiders had understood one crucial fact about humans. They had evolved on a death world not by being the strongest or the fastest, but by being the most paranoid. Every human military planner had been asking the same question since K3. What would we do if we were the raiders? The answer was exactly what Carix was planning, which was why Earth's intelligence services, working with Zilani communication networks, were already tracking the unusual raider movements. Why reserve fleets were being quietly positioned. Why allied worlds were receiving upgraded early warning systems. The raiders thought they were predators planning an ambush. They didn't realize they were prey walking into a trap. 3 weeks after the Battle of K3, the attack came. 17 raider fleets hit 17 different targets simultaneously, expecting to find scattered human defenders struggling to respond to multiple crises. Instead, they found prepared defenses, allied fleets, and very angry humans who had been hoping someone would be stupid enough to try exactly this. The Second Battle of K3, as historians would later call it, lasted exactly 47 minutes. It ended with the complete destruction of the Raider Alliance and a message that echoed through every dark corner of the galaxy. The Deathworlders were done being patient. In the aftermath, as the Galactic Council convened yet another emergency session, Ambassador Chen Weiming stood once more at the podium. Behind him, representatives from 15 species stood in solidarity. The Coalition of Mutual Defense, they called themselves. "The age of hiding from raiders is over," Chen announced. "Earth and her allies will patrol the shipping lanes. We will answer distress calls. We will protect those who cannot protect themselves. The Council is welcome to join us in this effort." He paused, his eyes hard. "Or you can continue debating while innocents die. But know this, humanity is done asking permission to do what's right. We are the monsters from a death world, yes, but we choose to be the monsters who stand guard in the night, who face the darkness so others can sleep safely, who answer when the helpless call." The human ambassador stepped down from the podium and walked toward the exit, the coalition representatives following. At the door, he turned back to the stunned council. "The Deathworlders have spoken. The question now is simple. Are you with us or are you irrelevant?" As they left, the council chamber erupted in chaos. But in colonies across the galaxy, beings who had lived in fear watched the footage and felt something they hadn't experienced in generations. Hope. The monsters were on their side now, and the monsters were very, very good at their job. The galaxy would never be the same.